guys, it's Becky with Design Bundles, and today I am really excited to talk to you again about Silhouette Studio. And today we are going to be talking about compound paths. Now, what are compound paths? Well, hold your horses because we will get into that, I promise. What we're going to talk about is converting to path, making a compound path, releasing a compound path, and of course we're going to cover the most common situations on when these would apply. So let's jump over to Silhouette Studio and we'll get started.
Alright guys, so here we are in Silhouette Studio, and first I want to show you your make and release compound path are technically tucked away in your modify panel over here. Now if you can't find that icon, you can also go to panels and you'll see you have your modify panel, and there you have make and release compound path. Okay, now they're also tucked away in your shortcut menu. So I'm just going to draw some basic shapes. Let's make it fun. Let's do a star. Okay, because we're also going to talk about making and releasing a compound path, but then also convert to path. Okay, so let's go ahead and get convert to path out of the way. So convert to path is when you're taking an object that is able to be edited. In this case, we are looking at a star FlexiShape, all right, which is a really cool little thing that you can come in here and check it out if you have not explored the FlexiShapes yet. But you can take the FlexiShape, and up until you convert it to path, you can change all these little pieces. Okay, you can still edit it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and just choose convert to path. And what that does is it removes it from an editable state and turns it into a solid object. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important when you're working with FlexiShapes, but it's also important when you're working with text. If I want to type out some text, until I do something with it, group this, ungroup this, this is why I guess technically not grouping it, but if I ungroup this then or weld it, then it would remove it from an editing format, right? But it doesn't always occur to me, like I don't really need to ungroup this, but I also don't need to weld it. So what would I do? Well, you can choose either of the first two, it will accomplish the same thing, but let me show you. I'm going to right click and convert to path. And what that does is it removes it from being able to be edited. Whereas this one can still, I can change the text if I want to. Now, why do I want to do that? There are two main reasons. Most importantly, if you are creating a design that you want to share with another Silhouette user, you will want to convert to path or technically weld or ungroup, because as long as it's in an editable format, if they do not have the same fonts installed that you do, then it will revert the text back to a standard system font, and it really can mess up the design because obviously you chose a font that worked well and you adjusted the sizing and placement. If you do not convert this to path, you send it to somebody, they open it up, they don't have that font, both the placement and the font and the sizing will all be off. All right, so that's reason number one. Reason number two is if I am curving text. Now by curving text, and of course we have a video on using different features of your text, okay? But if I'm curving text, if I am ready to remove it from an editable format, I'm ready to lock it into that curve shape, then I want to do the right thing and do convert to path. And then I can delete that circle. Okay, now why is that a big deal? Well, a lot of times you will see people ask the question, hey, I curve text, but whenever I try to mirror it, it starts doing weird things. Well, that is because they have not converted to path. And it's not really something that a lot of people talk about until you need it, which in these two circumstances are I'm trying to share a file with somebody, or I have curved text and I'm ready to flip it, or at least just lock it into that curved format. Okay, so those are a couple reasons why you would want to convert to path. Now let's get back to business. We originally started talking about making and releasing a compound path. It's also worth mentioning that these also are very closely related to grouping and ungrouping, so people can easily get them confused. Grouping and ungrouping is basically telling Silhouette Studio, and you know what, let's choose some fun colors to play with. Let's do like a mint, and then we'll do, how about like a lilac. And I am going to leave the, we'll change the line color to black, but we will go ahead and I'm going to increase a little bit just so that you can clearly see the lines. Okay, now you can see that these are completely separate shapes, right? If I select these and I group them together, I can just right click and choose group here. I'm telling Silhouette Studio, hey, these guys are friends. They want to hang out together for a little bit, but ultimately I want to be able to separate them again in the end. Okay? Now, when I go over to my send panel, you will see that the star will cut out of the rectangle, or I guess actually in this case it's a square. The star will cut out of the inside of the square. So for most basic designs, this is fine, because if that's what you wanted, was to be able to cut the star out of the square, mission accomplished. Okay, and at the end of the day, I can come back here and I can just ungroup these, and these go back to being their own individual shapes. Now, let me go ahead and create, I'm going to do these side by side for you, and I want to show you what some of the difference is. So this one we're going to group back together. I use Control-G on my keyboard. And this one here, I'm going to make a compound path. Now you see how that filled in white? That's actually just because it I don't want to say subtracted, but it excluded the star from the square. Now for cutting purposes, that doesn't really matter. You see the cut would be the same. But it's going to matter in the way that Silhouette Studio reads these files, and also the way that some of your editing tools will interact. So what is making a compound path? Basically, you're telling Silhouette Studio, hey, these are different lines, but they are coming together to form one object. So instead of right here with grouping, where you have two completely different shapes that are temporarily hanging out together, these shapes are more or less married together. Like, can you get them apart? Of course you can. I can release the compound path, but really when you are going to make a compound path, you are more or less marrying those together for the long term. And let me tell you why. Let's look at something as simple as your knife tool. If I take my knife tool and I'm going to just cut straight through the middle of these shapes, my make a compound path gives me two completely separate shapes, but my star is still where I positioned it. You'll notice that these sliced and they kept their individual properties. Okay, so why is that important? It is especially important if you are trying to fill a design with a cuttable pattern. So if you want more information about filling with a cuttable pattern, we do have one of those. It is, we created an apple mandala pattern, okay? And that, using that type of technique, if you were only trying to fill in this outline, then you would need to make that compound path so that it would interact with the other editing options in the way that you envision. Whereas this is still going to interact, if I've just grouped them together, these will still interact with each shape and their individual properties. Okay, let's talk about another reason why you would want to know about releasing a compound path. So if I'm coming in here with text, and for whatever reason, I decide that I need to make extensive edits to this font. Okay, and there are different reasons why you would want to, but let me show you what happens. If I'm going to release the compound path, and then I also do need to ungroup this one, you have to do both, you'll notice that it releases the insides of my letters. Okay, so that may be part of a design element that you're working with, or it might be something that you do accidentally, which is more common. When people don't understand what releasing a compound path does, it's very common for people to release the compound path by mistake and then start moving pieces that they don't intend to. Okay, it's also important, and I'm not going to go through an example of this one, but just know when you trace an item and maybe there are small outlier pieces that you are wanting to remove and you are trying to ungroup your traced image, a lot of times that's not going to release all the pieces that you are wanting to access. You're going to ungroup and release the compound path. Most of the time, release the compound path does it by itself on a trace image, but here's the way that I look at it. If I need to access part of a design and I go to ungroup and it does not give me access to what I was looking for, then I'm going to come back and do the release a compound path. So if ungroup doesn't working, releasing the compound path is going to be the other option that you're looking for. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to take care of it for you and give you access to all the little pieces that are with that design that maybe you want to remove. Okay, so let's recap. When do I want to make a compound path? I want to make a compound path when I'm trying to tell Silhouette Studio that I'm combining 2 shapes to create one. I want to marry those together because I am working towards an end result that these are going to be part of a larger cut file. I'm going to do the grouping when I just want to be able to size them together. I want to be able to move them together, but ultimately, for one reason or another, I would want them to remain separate. So hopefully that will provide some insight for you. And of course, there's always going to be outlying circumstances, and just really get in there and start playing around with your make and release compound path. But especially if you're releasing a compound path, just keep an eye on what it is that you're moving. That way you don't accidentally move something that you didn't mean to. So let's go ahead and jump over and do the recap.
So, isn't it super easy? Now, I'm not saying that you won't eventually down the road, you're going to wipe this tutorial from your mind and you'll be like, dang, what did Becky say about compound paths? It's not something that comes naturally to most crafters, so don't feel bad if you find yourself in that situation later on. But most importantly, just remember that those tools are there and don't be afraid to experiment with them, because I feel that that is the most successful way to really learn the software, is to just get in there and play around and experiment. And working with compound paths is definitely one of those tools that you're going to want to experiment with to really get it down. So, all right guys, if you have any questions or comments, make sure you leave those below. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way we can keep bringing you these awesome videos. So, all right guys, thanks for stopping by today. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.